Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Today our project is back on this 2004 F450. This is a truck we did the 6073 swap. The donor truck was a single fuel tank. This truck is a dual fuel tank. So we took the 60 wiring harness and filleted a bunch of the wiring out of it, and we're trying to make sure that our tank selector switch that goes in the dash will work properly. So we're piggybacking it for a test run right now, and we're gonna see that it's opening the valves and changing the sending units and all that. So let me get started on that, and we'll get a few more things rigged up, and I'll show you what we're doing. All right guys, we got our primary suction lines for the two tanks unhooked. We got our wiring spliced in and plugged into the sending units. We have a supply battery that's given us 12 volts power, and we were able to, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but the switch is flipping, and it's flipping between primary and secondary tanks. Sending unit should be switching to, and we jump the fuel pump. We hear gurgling on this tank when it's set for front, and gurgling on the suction line for the tank in the back when we're set on back. So I think we figured out our wiring for this. Now it's just a matter of looming it up and running it in the frame to the front of the truck, and then jumping into the dash. All right, well, everything tested good. I didn't think y'all wanted to sit here and watch me loom wire, so I kind of skipped ahead, but we got everything loomed up. So all of our wires back in. We ran out of loom, so we'll have to get a little bit extra. But this is just about ready to be threaded into the frame and plugged back in, and we'll have a little bit of hooking up to do under the dash, and fuel tank selector should be working, so that'll give you a good idea how that works. I'll show you how we route that underneath the truck. And since the original 7.3 wiring harness didn't have any of the proper pin connections in the harness, we're going to piggyback this and power it ourselves off of the fuse box. So we'll show you a little bit more about that when we get closer to it. All right, we're going to get our freshly loomed wiring harness and feed it to the back till we get to this big plug, which goes to the fuel valve switch, and we're going to feed that through there, get it all situated and plugged in, and then we'll route everything back to the front and into the dash. Okay, so this is gonna go up in here. Go ahead and plug that. And we need that in there. Alright, the rest of this can hang down for a little while. We'll go up on top and finish the install on the top side. I'm going to snake this through here. And we already have a plug for a sending unit inside the tank, but we don't need that one. That's on the single tank harness. This harness is going to piggyback it, so won't need to run that one. And just abandon it and run this through. Let me get another tool here. Alright, run me Chinese fingers through here. See if we can catch this. I'm going to come back and zip tie all this loom in here before we finish up, but we just want to make sure we want to have everything routed correctly and fitting right before we do that. Alright, and then here's our rear tank plug. Okay, so that should, except for the zip tying, that should finish plumbing this out. Alright, we're just going to run this. We got our main wiring harness up here. I'll snap that in later. I'm going to snake this harness up through here and let it work its way all the way up to the front. And it'll come into the dashboard. Like I said, once we make sure everything fits, we'll come back and zip tie everything, and then we'll be able to try it all out, make sure it's hooked up. We got to make some connections in the dash for from the fuel tank rocker switch in the dash to connect to this harness, and we should be good to go. All right, we're gonna jump into the cab now, get our dash panel installed. We're going to install our little toggle switch so that we can see how much wire we're going to need to connect the two. These are just with some little 7mm head bolts. Let's try this again. You can hear the security team getting excited. They're ready to come out for a little exercise. As soon as I get caught up on this project, we're going to let the dogs run a little bit. Alright, we got him that time. Let's get this one on there. Alright, let's run these up. There we go. Now, move this cable out of the way. Stash it in here for right now. Come on, you. Get in here. take a wiring harness. I'll pop this in here and we'll go around and lay out the harness, and then we can get an idea how many feet of wire we need to connect to the bottom. And during the 6073 swap, we did leave a little extra hole in the firewall for this because it was going to be too complicated, at least I thought, to run on trying to get all this onto the same factory harness. So it just seemed like an easier idea to let this be its own separate thing, and we'll see how that works out. Alrighty, let me fish it out and get some wire cut, and we'll get back to you. Alright guys, we're down here on the 2004 F450 again. It was running the dual tank wires, which are right here, and we ended up, I think we popped a diode on the outer power distribution box, which we replaced. But even before that, we got this clicking noise, and when you cycle the key, you're getting this. So I think there's something going on with the GEM module, which is back here on top of your fuse box. Actually, if you come up right here, get some light in there. That black box with the gray plug on top of the fuse box is your GEM module, and that appears to be what's clicking. What we're going to do is we're going to pull the fuse box out. So we're going to pull the top two plugs off the GEM up here, and then we're going to unbolt the fuse box, which are these bolts here and here, and we're going to tuck it in and roll it so we can get to what you can see, or those two big master plugs right there have 10 millimeters on them. So 10 millimeter bolts will unbolt the fuse box, and 10 millimeter bolts will undo those plugs on the back of the fuse box, and then it's just Torx head bolts to separate the GEM module. So we're going to try that out and see if that helps our situation or not, and y'all come along for the ride. Let's see if it works. Alright, so we have disconnected our battery so we don't cause any damage, and we're going to, while we're here, it's easy to get to, it makes it easier if you pull off your park brake release. Because the cable gets in the way of maneuvering the fuse box. So anytime you can get stuff out the way with just two bolts, it's a good thing to do. Save yourself some headache. A little tip that I do that everybody has their own way of doing is when I pull something off, I try and put the nuts or bolts back in the holes they go to, so that I don't end up with a tray of different size bolts at the end of the day that I don't remember where they went. Alright, let's get these off. These two nuts you need a deep socket for, 10 millimeter. And then these two bolts here, I'm going to leave one in while we go after the two side plugs before we get too far in. Okay guys, let me get one thing I forgot to mention earlier is the gauge cluster. This is the main reason we're going after this GEM module. We're not getting power to most of the stuff in the gauges, so there should be an all pressure light here. Of course, all pressure won't read with the key on. Voltage should read with the key on. I do not have the fuel gauge currently hooked up because I'm running into this problem, and we'll get to that a little later. And of course the coolant. But I have no tack or anything else, so I'm not going to start her, but just to show you, when we turn the key on, you get lights, but we're not getting our oil pressure light, and we're not getting any voltage. And of course we're not getting any tack, but I'm not going to start it up now. I only have one battery hooked up. So that's the main symptom we're after, is to get this gauge cluster working. And I think if we change that GEM, we may be able to get that done. So we're going to proceed with getting the GEM off and see if that helps us out. Alright, I'm going to show you guys. We're going to use some plug wire boot pullers to squeeze the tabs. Might not be able to do this with 2 hands, or might need 2 hands to do this. Depends on how stubborn this is. So we're going to squeeze the tang that's on the bottom, and there she goes. We'll see if we can reach the second one. You just want to get something in there that can depress the little squeeze tang, and then those 2 wires will come off. So as you can see right in there, those 2 are off. And now we're going to pull our final bolt and see if we can get to the 2 big master plugs on the back. Alright, hope you guys can see. I know the sun in the back is kind of bright, but we're going to buzz off our last 10mm. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and pull some of these relays off to give me a little bit more wiggle room. And just kind of, these are all the same, but it's a good idea to make a habit of pulling stuff off in a certain order and putting it in that order, just to keep track of stuff. Okay, so we're going to take this, see if we can get it back a little bit. The dead end plug anyway. Just get it out of the way. Alright, so we got a 10mm back here for each one of these 2 big plugs. I think we got her loose. Let's see. Might have to go a little more with the 10. I think that's got it. Oh, she's coming. Alright, now we got to get up to the other 10mm, and of course the shifting cable's in the way. Alright, I think that's out. Let's see if we can get this one off. All right. trying to get these on top of the fuse box to make some wiggle room to get her out the bottom. See what's got me here. Alright. Well, and that is the Fickum back here. We're going to go to the other truck, and you've got 3 Torx that pull it off, and we're going to swap it out with a spare. Okay, got your Torx in here. If you look along the side here, we had 3 plugs to pull off, and on the donor one I'll show you in a minute, just has 1. And the truck that came out of was a basic truck. It didn't have power windows, power locks, all that mirror stuff, and that's all we need in this one. Even though the harness on this side where the 2 screws are, you have this plug here. So you want to pull on this side and unplug that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our other one, and again the other two are blanked off. So I'm hoping that that's all we need is the engine or the controls for the engine gauges and stuff. So that's plugged in. Run our screws back. Let's see, where did I put my driver? Okay, but like I said, even though the harness that we put in this 04 came out of a loaded 2000 F450, we've got manual windows, manual locks, because in these older trucks, in my opinion, the more electronic stuff you have, the more possibility you have for something to go wrong. And so I just do away with a lot of that stuff in order to you know, just that you can always depend on manual mirrors, manual windows. How often do you move mirrors? I don't move them that much. So we're gonna reverse procedure, slide this back in the hole, plug our 2 big fuse panel plugs in. Before we do that, we're going to blow this out, maybe put a little dielectric grease on here, and plug our plug in. We'll leave these 2 off, and if that fixes our problem and we don't lose anything else that we need, then we're golden. If not, we'll have to see if we can hunt up another GEM module. Alright, let me get this back in. It'll be the same reverse procedure we just did, and I'll get back to you when we're starting up again. Okay guys, just to follow up on that fuel tank wiring, these little devices right here are awesome. It's an adder circuit. So you remove a fuse, put it in the bottom slot, Let me get to remove a fuse, put it in the bottom slot, and then add your fuse for the device you're adding to the top slot, and then you can pop it back in, and it allows you to add a circuit without jamming other things into the fuse box, which I'll show you in a minute. So we're getting our power over to our fuel tank selector switch from the adder circuit. We're grounded right here to a truck ground. So only thing going into the dash from the back is the power circuits. So what we ended up doing to not cut into the dash is we have two different harnesses here. Okay, one of them is the single tank 7.3 harness, and the other one is the dual tank harness that came off of this truck, which we filleted out of the other one. So we come power to the switch valve, which is underneath here for the fuel tank selector switch valve, and then we're feeding our signal and ground from the two sending units back into the 7.3 wiring, which is already set up to go to the dash, so we don't have to hook it up. So that just kind of wraps up what's what with that. I know it's a little bit of a inconsistent video, but that's all we could do with the tail chasing and all of this. You know, like I said, without having these tanks plugged in, the ground that the sending unit provides was actually messing with the grounds for the gauges, and that's what that was actually causing our problem. Just try the adder circuit. That way it's a lot easier than damaging your fuse box slots by jamming wire in there, and I'll show you an example of that here in just a second. Okay guys, here's an example of what not to do, which is just shoving wire in with the fuse. These fuse contacts, as you can see, fit tightly to the prongs. So even though that will work and you can jam them in there with the fuse, it's going to stretch it out. So you're going to damage it and have to come back and redo it at some future point. So stay away from cramming wires into the fuse box. Use that adder circuit we just showed you.